He seemed to be sitting at this stop sign for an unusually long time. I remember her looking both ways. She looked right, and then she looked left. Then I remember her gazing at me from her rear view mirror. She had such a gentle smile on her face, as a loving mother would, looking at their child. As she was looking at me, I could see her face change from loving to complete worry and panic. Her eyes shot from me to the seat next to me. As she's doing this, I can hear the passenger door next to me open. I turn my attention from my mother to the noise of the car door opening, and I see a man entering the car and sitting right next to me. He then tells my mother to carry on driving. There was a weird kind of vibe that I got from this man. He didn't seem to be fazed by either one of us in the car. Even the fact that he had just hopped in a car with two people he didn't even know didn't seem to bother him. He seemed so very calm. He said very little, but enough to get his point across. He had long salt and pepper hair, and at the time I thought that he had dreadlocks, but now as an adult I believe that his hair was most likely just ratty from not brushing it and washing it. His clothes were worn and torn, dirty and dulled from the sun. I remember seeing his toes peeking out from his old and tatty black work boots. His jeans were tied together from where they had been torn and ripped. His skin seemed so badly sun-kissed and filthy from lack of bathing. An odour was coming from this gentleman that truly had my nose hairs curling. His smell filled the car. I could tell my mother could smell it too, because she kept wiping the back of her hand across her nose. My mother told the man she wanted him to get out of the car. In her voice I could tell that she was trying to be stern and demanding, but she was such a kind-hearted woman that even her yelling sounded like she was singing. So of course the man disregarded this. He leaned back in the seat and he told my mother to keep driving and that it was just up that way. I so badly wanted to glare and stare at this man, but I didn't want to upset him because God knows what would have happened. I'm leaning as far as I can against my door with my head down and my hands in my lap. I feel the car jerk forward. I can hear my mother breathing heavily as she's worried It's here. My mother jerks the car to the dirt, the car skidding to gain traction to bring the car to a complete stop. His passenger door flung open and he bolts up and out from the car. He didn't even get a chance to close the door himself because my mother had sped off so fast that the car door slammed shut because of the speed. Then I hear the car doors lock. That is truly terrifying if you think about it. I don't know how old the OB was in this situation, but imagine being his mother and just sitting there helplessly, trying to figure out what to do, but all you can do is just drive. And just the uncertainty and the not knowing of what this man is going to do to your child. I think that's every parent's worst nightmare right there. The next story is of the paranormal type. You might have heard of it because it gained a kind of a following on Reddit, and people even created a whole subreddit on the topic. This story is called Purple Mummy, and it was originally posted in the comment section of Ask Reddit by a user called Professor Dog. When my son was first learning to talk, he would tell us about something or someone called Purple Mummy. It could be an imaginary friend, but these details are a little creepy, and in my own personal opinion, that's an understatement. Here is a few ask him what was wrong, and his answer was, "Purple Mummy won't let me sleep." Now, I don't have any children of my own, but if I did and one of them would tell me these stories, hell no. Oh, hell no. Nope. Nuh-uh. This is just way too terrifying. But, I mean, kids can be terrifying. They can be incredibly funny and nice, but they can also be extremely terrifying, as proven by this story. The next story was originally posted by a user called Madam Jokes. Their story is called La Santa Muerte. One time when I was a kid, I saw La Santa Muerte, which is the Grim Reaper. A little background info on my family. My dad's side of the family had always believed in La Santa Muerte, and they worshipped her. My grandmother was also known in Mexico for being a witch and helping people out with money or love or conflict issues. That's nice of her. And she claimed that she received her powers from La Santa Muerte. The adults would always call my grandma for advice when they needed help with something. Always. The day I saw La Santa Muerte started off with my 16-year-old cousin running into my mum's house, yelling that he had just been run over by a speeding car while on his way to hang out with my brother. His face and his body were all bloody and scratched up. My dad and my mum patched him up and, of course, called my grandma to tell her what had happened. She immediately said that she wanted to talk to my cousin, and so he started talking to her and walked outside because he needed some air. I followed him and was playing outside while he talked on the phone when suddenly the phone call was cut off and static sounds came out of it. We both, for some reason, looked to story, it has the folklore in it, which is always really, really intriguing. And this person's nun sounds like a wonderful, helpful human being. So although it is a really, really creepy story, I also really like it for some reason. The next one is not a Reddit story, but is a subscriber submission of a real scary experience that they've personally had. So this is Shannon's story. Her story is called His Hand Grabbed Me. When I was about 6 or 7 years old, I had something unexplainable happen to me. I still don't have a perfect explanation, and any that I come up with never seem to ease my mind. This experience started out as a nightmare. I had a nightmare that was common among many children, the one where you are left behind at a store and you can't find your parents. From what I remember of the dream, I was in a clothing store with my mum, and she told me she was going to the section right next to mine to check something. I was looking through some clothing on my own, and as time passed I felt a little worried, but I figured that after a little bit she would be back. I was moving a shirt on the rack to the side when an announcement was made on the speaker saying that the store would be closing soon. I started to look for my mum, but I couldn't find her. I tried calling for her, and there was no reply. Eventually, I started running to different sections of the store to try and find her, but I couldn't. Suddenly, the lights all shut off, and I realized that the store had closed and I was still inside. I started feeling stressed, and then something happened that made me freeze. I felt a man's hand grab mine. It felt like someone middle-aged, but their hands were rough. I felt like I was trapped, and I tried to run, but their suffer with tonsillitis really bad occasionally, and on this occasion I was having difficulty sleeping and breathing. I was trying to sleep, but I was still aware of my surroundings when I heard footsteps come up to my door. My door opened, and I could feel some figure coming in and leaning over me, almost touching my face. It made the hair on my neck stand up, and I could feel the breathing. I thought at first that it was my mum coming to check on me because I wasn't feeling too well. So she was just making sure that I was doing alright. What I thought was my mum began to walk around my room as though it was stomping on my floor. It bumped into my cupboard, my wall, my heater, and it made a lot of noise. I was about to get up and ask my mum what she was doing and why she was making so much noise when I felt it. It hit my bed, and my bed literally shifted all the way into the wall. My heart began to race, and I realized this isn't my mother. I curled up into a ball and I began to pray. It leaned in close to my face, close enough that I can feel its breathing, and then it walked away and slammed the door behind it. The next morning, I asked my family members if anyone had heard anything or if anyone had come to check on me the night before, but they all said they hadn't, and they didn't take me very seriously. My dad even got annoyed by the door opening, and he bought a new lock for my door, but there's still a crack between the door and the door frame, and it's still not fully closed. That was especially terrifying. I also want to thank this subscriber for sharing their story to the channel. Thank you so much. And once again, if you feel inspired to also share your experiences to the channel for me to include it in a Scary Stories video, just contact me either through email or Instagram. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me this evening. I hope you enjoyed tonight's stories, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next one. Good night. Good night.